Welcome to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain, your talk show for insights on the criminal justice system, community issues, and public safety in Orange and Osceola counties. Join State Attorney Andrew Bain as he dives into the issues that matter most to you, keeping it real every step of the way.
All right, good afternoon, everyone out there on 98.5, The Wire, on social media, and everyone here in the Ninth Circuit. Welcome to the show. And this is State Attorney Andrew Bain. We are on Community Conversations, and we're going to dive into one of the most important issues that we are dealing with here in our community that you may not even know about. So we're going to talk a little bit about human trafficking on this episode, and we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what we're doing on the law enforcement side, what are we doing to support survivors and victims of human trafficking, and kind of have a bigger look at what is going on with the whole issue as a whole. So we're going to have a great time. We're going to talk to some people, and we're going to really get at it when it comes to giving you the information about human trafficking and the things that are going on in the Ninth Circuit. I want to take a minute, though, before we get going. You always want to talk a little bit about what's going on at the office, talk a little bit about kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And I want to talk to you about what our mission is. Like, what do I tell my state attorney, my assistant state attorneys, and my staff and my investigators? What is our mission? So our mission is to create a safer community by upholding and enforcing the law and competently prosecuting cases fairly, honorably, and without biases. And so we always want to be an office that's committed to transparency, accountability, supporting the well-being of our victims, and proactively collaborating with our community partners to serve, to deter, and prevent crime in our community. So that's really what we want to do. We really want to be an agency that is there to prevent crime. So I'm super excited to be here to talk about that and talk to you about how does that really work? What does that really mean? So my vision for the office is that to get that done, we have to have a vision, right? So our vision has to be one that is about community trust. And we want to be a trusted public servant for our community. They want to be able to trust us that we're going to be able to handle the things that happen in our community. We're going to be able to handle the tragedies and the crime, and we're going to be able to provide our compassionate services to our victims. So we are all about doing that on every single day. It's really something that is about how we get our job done on a regular basis. And so I want to build that idea that we have on certain foundations, right? We want to be, foundationally strong. And so our job is to seek justice, to uphold justice. So how do we do that? We have justice as a house, as a roof, and then we got to have pillars to reach those goals. And so I want to talk to you about the 4 pillars that I talk to my staff about. One of them being safety, the other one being community, the other one being integrity, and the other one being transparency. So safety. The first thing about being a law enforcement officer or a prosecutor in this circuit, you have to be community safety minded. It's about the safety of every single person that's inside the Ninth Circuit. That's from Yeehaw Junction all the way to Popka, from the parks to Christmas and to Kenansville. So it's a huge area, but our job is to keep everybody safe and to build a situation and a community partnership that allows that to happen, which brings us to the second pillar, community. So we want to be a community. We want to be a community inside our office and outside our office. We want to partner with everyone that is in the fight with us to keep our community safe. That's by education. That's by providing jobs. That's by providing opportunities, providing trauma therapy, anything that we can have that our community has to offer that can help us on our front is going to be the best we can do. But we want to reflect that inside our office. So we want to be community minded in our office. We want to be an office that is, we want to, celebrate each other. We want to celebrate the good things that are happening in our office. And we also want to be there for our office internally for when things don't go as good and when we have tragedies, either professionally or personally. And so we want to build that strong foundation inside of our office. And we have to have integrity while doing it. We have to be someone that the community can trust. All right. And that also means we have to be professionals. You have to be a professional attorney. That means that you have to go to court and be on time. You have to be responsive to our victims, responsive to the public, responsive to the needs of the people that we serve. And we have to do it with transparency. There's no hiding the ball. We are who we are. We are here to do the job of protecting our community. And it is something that I take very seriously. It's something that I want to always be as clear, as transparent about what we do every single day. So I'm super excited about the opportunities to make that happen. And so let's jump into this thing about human trafficking, man. This human trafficking is a really big issue. It's something that comes up every single day in our office. It comes up when I'm out in the community. And we got to talk about, what is human trafficking? What exactly does that mean? And it really boils down to a lot to the what we call, the force of like acts of somebody else. So if you're acting on behalf of someone else, where you're being forced to do that, is part of the human trafficking problem that we encounter. So we want to be a partnership that really deals with that issue and really goes at it in a really serious way. So super excited to make that happen. Super excited to have that conversation with our community partners. And I want to bring on one of my teammates, we'll call it, in the fight against human trafficking. And we have something in our that a lot of people don't have. So we have something called the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation, and it was something cooked up by one of our longest running state attorneys, Lawson Lamar. And a lot of people know who State Attorney Lawson Lamar is, and that he was also the sheriff of Orange County at one point, and he also then became the state attorney here for a long time. And one of his great I call him brainchilds was MBI. And I want to talk to a good teammate of mine and partner in our fight with human trafficking, Sergeant Goody. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good, sir. Hello, everyone. I'm Sergeant Goody with MBI.
All right. So to talk to little people about MBI. What does that mean?
Yep. Like State Attorney just mentioned, MBI was created back in 1978. As you know, local authorities only have jurisdiction in so much area. If you work for Orange County Sheriff's Office, you only have jurisdiction within the county. Same with Osceola County Sheriff's Office. All the local municipalities that fall within there, Kissimmee PD, Orlando Police Department, Winter Garden, you name the city that you live in, they only have jurisdiction and they only have power within their jurisdiction. So MBI was formed back then because, as you all are aware, bad guys don't have to follow by those same jurisdictional guidelines that we do. So MBI was formed with a lot of creative minds at the time that really put some thought into it and realized that if we could start a task force here in Central Florida where all the local municipalities and all the local sheriff's offices can get together and create this task force to give the ability to go outside of their home jurisdiction to investigate these types of crimes. It would give them more leeway and more ability to make the community safer. And that's what was created back in 1978. It's still going on all the way to this day. So it's one of the longest running task force in the country.
And so, but you guys don't investigate everything, right? So you have a limited scope. So what is that limited scope that you guys investigate?
Correct. There's two sides of the house. One side of the house is the narcotic side. They investigate everything from mid-range to high-level narcotic organizations. Our side of the house is mainly focused on the human trafficking. So I'm a supervisor on the human trafficking unit.
All right. And so talk to the people about, what exactly are you looking for when you talk about human trafficking? What does human trafficking mean? Is it like it is in the movies? Is it Taken? Is it one of these other human trafficking movies that we see sometimes? What exactly does it really look like on a day-to-day basis here locally?
Yep. So it's really surprising. Every time I get a new case that we assign to an agent, all of them are very unique. None of them are exactly like the last one. But it's not a lot like the movies. The movies make, Hollywood always brings their glamour and stuff into it. It makes it look, a lot more appealing or a lot more exciting of a situation. But a lot of times these crimes are right in your face, right in your local community. A person that could be getting trafficked that's at the shopping center that you're shopping at that time, and they're right in front of you, and you have no idea what kind of lifestyle and what they're experiencing on a regular basis. So human trafficking kind of falls in a lot of different realms, but it's basically, I get surprised a lot of times when I talk to different people and they really don't understand human trafficking. When I was a brand new officer, I frankly didn't really understand it myself. So I can kind of understand why someone in the local community would not really understand it. It's something that's been going on for years and years and years, but it's something new that we're really starting to really push in the last few decades to really start combating. And locally here in Central Florida, I think we have one of the strongest task force, state attorney's office, and other non-governmental organizations that help out to help combat this.
So, who's a victim of human trafficking though? Like, is there a race? Is there a socioeconomic status? Is there a religion or something that ties this crime together that it mostly affects?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that a lot of people bring up when I do presentations. This type of crime, it affects everyone, all ages, all genders, all races, you name it. We've had victims as young. I think the youngest one we've had, was in recent time, is 12 years old. And we have people that are trafficked that are much older in their 50s or 60s that are still being trafficked. So it kind of all walks of life kind of get affected by this.
But I mean, because you said like it's happening to so many people, so many of our neighbors. So how does that happen? Like, how is this crime so pervasive? That we could be standing right next to someone that could be a victim of human trafficking or a survivor of human trafficking and not even know.
Right. So for the statute to be able to, for me to be able to put a case together, if it's an adult, I have to be able to prove that there's some type of force, fraud, or coercion that's taking place. So that means that this victim is being forced or coerced into either sex trafficking or in some cases labor trafficking cases. In a lot of our cases, we're finding a lot of coercion takes place. So a lot of these situations develop over time. This isn't somebody typically that's just getting a white van's pulling up and throwing somebody in a car and taking them away to be trafficked. A lot of these times, what traffickers do is they build a relationship with their victim, and that develops over various times depending on the person, but they gain the trust of that individual until they have the full support of that individual, and that individual just believes everything that this trafficker is telling them, and they're willing to do anything for this person, whether it's because they're addicted to drugs, they're homeless, and they do not have any type of family structure that could help them get back on their feet. So they really manipulate these individuals to make them feel like they're the only person that can help them in life. And if they do what the trafficker is telling them to do, life will be better off for them.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do traffickers find these people? Is it the internet? Is it, at the movie theater? Is it at church? I mean, where do these traffickers find these people that they like turn into victims and start coercing them or grooming them? I think it's a term that we use a lot.
Sure.
Into becoming a human trafficking victim.
You named a few of the places that they do occur. Those places, it's kind of everywhere. Local malls, shopping centers. A lot of times, what we find is a lot of our victims have already struggled with some type of drug problem, or they've already been in the criminal justice system, so they're already struggling with something. And these individuals sometimes will find them through the correctional facilities, youth homes, like you mentioned, malls, shopping centers, churches. It's kind of a broad brand that different traffickers come from different walks of life themselves, so they kind of will find a person. Most traffickers are very, very smart people. I wouldn't consider most of the traffickers that we find to be dumb individuals. They know how to manipulate individuals. And a lot of the victims that we recover during our operations where we locate them, when we get to talking to them, a lot of them will say, like, if you would have gone back 5 years ago, I would have laughed at you if you would have said I would have been a victim of human trafficking, because it wouldn't happen to me. And that's what we always find, is a lot of them say this would never happen to me until they're in that situation.
All right. So let's give the people a quick rundown of what it really looks like when somebody's being human trafficked, and we'll kind of more about when it gets to you, like to your desk. So tell me, tell the people about how you all investigate these kind of cases and kind of what all goes into that process.
Sure. Typically, I'll if we're not already working a specific individual, I'll get a phone call, whether that's from a local patrol officer that's on the side of the road with a victim. That happens quite often, that we get cases started just by good old-fashioned police work, and patrol officers out on the road, and they see something that's just not right, and they give us a phone call. Crime line is a huge one for us. Our community is constantly calling in tips to us, which is fantastic for us. They just give the basic information typically that kind of gets the ball rolling. The case can come lots of different ways, but those are kind of our main ways that we typically get some of our cases rolling. And what we will do from there is, if patrol is out with a possible victim of human trafficking, we will meet with that victim that night. It doesn't matter if it's banking hours, 9 to 5, or it's 2 o'clock in the morning. We always have somebody that's available and on call to go out to meet with that person. And something kind of unique to here in Central Florida is how we structured this task force is we have victim advocates that are embedded with our unit. So it's not just a police officer, a detective that's going out to talk to these individuals, but there's also a victim advocate who's not law enforcement, who understands our role and what we're trying to do, but they're also there to benefit the victim, get them the resources that they need. And that's kind of different that I don't see in a lot of different communities outside of here in Central Florida. And we found that that's a lot of we get a lot of success because of that relationship we have with the victim advocates.
So I got to do my big plug for my office. We have one of the best victim advocates in the world that is with MBI. She is amazing. She is one of the most caring, kindest people and dedicated to her victims that I've ever met in my entire life. And it's part of what makes our relationship so special, because she's actually part of my office, and we give her out to MBI to be there for our victims 24/7. Not from the time the case starts, even if the case doesn't get charged, go to trial, she's with those victims every step of the way, and she's amazing. So I had to give a big shout out to her.
Absolutely.
And so I want to thank you, Sarge, for giving us some of that information and making sure that the people know that we have dedicated departments and officers that are there to help combat this issue here locally. And so super excited to make sure that that's going to occur going forward for our community. So thank you for coming on, and we'll talk to you later.
Yes, sir.
All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring on one of my good friends from the community. He's one of our community partners. You know, you hear me talk a lot about community partnerships and how important those are to what we do in our office. And these are one of the community partners that's really been working hard with our office and to make this make a difference with this population of people that we have in our community. So we'll bring on Tomas.
Hello, sir.
Good to see you again. I know we just saw each other a few minutes ago, but
Yes.
it's good to see you, my friend.
You as well. Thank you.
So, so Tomas, you talk to people about United Abolitionists, you know, and then gotta give a little backstory about the name and kind of where you've come to where we are now. Because we just had that little talk just now at lunch.
Sure. So thank you for having me. And I really began specifically focusing on the crime of human trafficking back in, actually it was 20 years ago this month, this past week, when I had learned that the issue was happening, that modern day slavery was unfortunately alive. And I got involved. I was one of the first victim advocates on human trafficking in Central Florida. And so way back then said, we need to get educated, right? Just like you're educating the community today. And so we had one of the first seminars here, and that was actually in Circuit 18. And so that birthed now what is the Space Coast Human Trafficking Task Force. And it was just, once you learn about the issue, right, once that light bulb turns on, you cannot turn back. And so came to Orlando about a year later, and we began what's now the Central Florida Human Trafficking Task Force. And simultaneously, I met MBI, who you just heard, the Metropolitan Bureau, and we started looking at cases that were occurring right here in our own backyard. Shortly after that, I began, was then Florida Abolitionist, the nonprofit 501c3. We did a name change in 2019 because we were expanding outside of Florida to United Abolitionists. But we have been, you could say our contribution, State Attorney, to this issue is first responders. And that's why MBI was a great partner, and the State Attorney's Office, because y'all see that those victims, right, when they're being recovered, identified. And so we, as a nonprofit, how could we contribute? And we contribute we have a 24/7 hotline. So a lot of the callers are first responders, law enforcement. We started getting survivors about, 7-8 years ago, starting to call as well. And they may be at a hotel, they may be coming out of the jail, however, whatever situation they're in, saying, I want help. And so we facilitate triage and care coordination for that victim to get, maybe to a safe house, detox, maybe connect with an attorney, maybe connect with law enforcement if they want to do a case and report what occurred. And so that's the niche of United Abolitionists, is we do training, like I mentioned, from day one, how to identify and report. People call the hotline. We also partner with the National Human Trafficking Hotline in DC, and of course with our own child welfare, the Department of Children and Families, if they're a minor. So we're vigilant on that first response. The reason why it was such a great partnership with MBI and the State Attorney's Office in Circuit 9 was we learned quickly that we had to build rapport and trust with that victim. It could be a male, female, victimized, sex trafficking or labor trafficking. And that rapport and trust was crucial for them to say, hey, I want help. We've created care backpacks so that they can have hygiene items, clothes upon recovery. Maybe they need some food. Maybe they haven't eaten in a while. And so those are things that we're on the front lines doing along with our partners of law enforcement and your office.
All right. So I want to break down a little bit about what you talked about, because I want to talk. One of the things that I think a lot of people are confused about a lot is that when they think about human trafficking, they immediately go to sex trafficking, right?
Yes.
But there's all types of ways to be human trafficked, right?
There are. Under our law, the federal law and the state statute, there is, I tell folks in training, human trafficking is the umbrella. Underneath are three different aspects of it, or faces. There's, of course, sex trafficking, which we hear about a lot in the media or movies. There's also labor trafficking. And in fact, those were some of the first cases. The first case in Florida was the United States versus Tecum out of Bonita Springs, Florida. So they're bringing in folks from Central America to be labor trafficking slaves. And then the third is domestic servitude, folks that were basically house servants, right? Under forced fraud or coercion. And so those are the three faces of trafficking here in the United States under that umbrella of human trafficking.
Yeah. So Sarge talked a little bit about, this forced fraud or coercion. What do you see what does that look like though when you're dealing with the victims? Like, what does that actually tangibly look like?
Right here in Florida and here in Central Florida specifically, what the sergeant had just mentioned, it's not really what we see popularized in the media, the movie Taken or even Sound of Freedom, where somebody's abducted. Here in Central Florida, what we're seeing is that coercion part. So there's force, right? What we see in the movies, fraud, which basically anyone that's in a victim of human trafficking has somehow been a victim of fraud. But the main thing is that coercion, right? That luring. Hey, connecting with somebody. I want to be your boyfriend. You're beautiful. There's cases that have been prosecuted by the Ninth Circuit where people were being approached, right, in clubs and in downtown Orlando. You could be a model, you could be this or that. And so that coercion is very powerful. And I feel like many times it's misunderstood, right? Because they say, well, she went with him, or, she participated in this or that. But it was really, again, fraud and deceit that trafficker used to coerce that victim.
Yeah. So I have one of these stories from one of our community partners. And she shared her testimony of being a human trafficking survivor, and she talked about how she was being blackmailed into human trafficking. That I gotta tell everybody, if you take this picture and send it to anyone, it's gonna be, you just gotta think that everybody saw. Yeah. And then she did that, and then the trafficker started saying, well, I want to send it to your mom, to your boss, to your pastor, all these kind of things like that. And then that's how she got, slipped into that life. And so it's not just about always, about people getting beat up, right?
It's not. And that's where a lot of these traffickers and pimps are what the FBI has coined Romeo, right? Traffickers or pimps. Mm-hmm. And they come in very smooth. A lot of folks have a lot of images of what a trafficker pimp looks like, maybe even based on the movies from the 70s, but it's not like that. What Sergeant just mentioned was it can be somebody that looks like your grandma. I mean, there's women traffickers, right? And so it is not based on any stereotype. Unfortunately, there are bad actors in every culture, in every race, in every ethnicity and gender. And so we have to be vigilant that if anybody is trying to deceive somebody, right, and that's really the campaign. I believe, State Attorney, that's important these days, is to educate our youth and our children because they live online in this digital age, and the traffickers are targeting them.
Yeah, I mean, we just had a law passed recently where the governor signed a bill and the legislature passed one about social media, but I think this is one of the most dangerous things that that a child can have access to. I mean, if you look at, man, the cases of not just exploitation and things like that that resulted on some kind of online connection, and that's just not social media. It's not just going out to Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or some of the other platforms, but this is Fortnite and Minecraft and some of these other games that a lot of are popular with a lot of the children, and they have messaging capabilities. And people, you think the kids just sitting there playing, building a Lego set on Minecraft, and he's also talking to some person that that they shouldn't be talking to.
Absolutely, and it's unfortunate because parents and guardians don't know. They think somebody may be just gaming, right? And as you mentioned, they're recruiting on gaming, on social media. These kids believe somebody is really their new friend, or maybe somebody of romantic interest. And we've found that many of them are being victims, if anything, of some type of exploitation. And so that's very important that we educate our parents, our grandparents, our guardians, and that the kids are being targeted. There's a lot of bad actors out there, a lot of fake profiles. And so we need to just be vigilant.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about the mind state of a victim when they're usually recovered. Like, are they? I mean, do they even like see themselves as victims like all the time?
Absolutely not. And I know that's hard for people to wrap their mind around sometimes, because somebody that's being that forced fraud or coercion, right, and it's been such so abused and exploited in horrific ways. We would think that, okay, they can identify as a victim, and they do not. I know I had mentioned our last, under your leadership, our diversion program for ladies and males that are wanting to have a fresh start, which is literally the name of our program here in Circuit 9 under your office, that we had 18 survivors at the last class, and many of them came in believing they're not a victim, right? They're very, a lot of them are street hard and just, so many unfortunate things have happened to them. But throughout the day and throughout the program, I saw how they began to soften and recognize that they have been exploited, that was not, they didn't willfully sign up for what ended up happening to them. And it wasn't their fault, just because they believed somebody who led them, in deceit. That's not their fault. And so a lot of these victims believe that because they haven't been taken, right, or abducted, that they willfully participated in this crime. Yeah.
I mean, I think we also were doing one of our last cases that we resolved when it comes to human trafficking, and it started as that. It was she was a prostitute that was addicted to drugs, and she got approached by two people. It was like, hey, like, I know you're homeless. You're too beautiful to be out here on the trail, and we will take care of you. And it turned into to a horror show after that. Where it's like, well, you got to do 4 dates before you can eat.
Yes,
you got to sleep with 4 people or commit 4 sexual acts on someone for money before you're able to get food. Or they'll hold drugs over her head. It was, it's different. The first part of it was willful, but how I went further than that is always hard.
These master manipulators are great at identifying the vulnerabilities in an individual, and so it could be anywhere from needing just something to eat or somewhere to lay their head, and it can be also just looking for love and acceptance. So that it ranges again. Trafficking does not have is not exclusive, right? It can be someone that's homeless, and it can be also somebody from one of our more socioeconomic neighborhoods, because they're looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yeah, so we see that a lot as well. I mean, is that we see victims that, like I try to say, there's nowhere you can't find a victim. I've had experience where I was actually doing some work with, and I started sharing about what we're doing, our diversion program that you talked about. We started sharing about that, and she, confessed to me that she was, a trafficking victim, and that she was a survivor. And I had been going to church with her for now almost 15 years, and then she told me about all these other personal testimonies, but she never told me that, and it was something that still kind of keeps me going on this issue, because it's just, we don't know.
We don't, and that's why that building that trust and rapport is so critical. And we call it being victim-centered or trauma-informed in our field, and that is important. And I applaud MBI and other local law enforcement who have began to really work in that approach, right? That they're there to do their job, right? To get these bad actors and to hopefully prosecute them to justice. But they've also learned that with these victims, we have to be human, and we have to understand that they, it's unbelievable some of the things they've been through, right? And that they're still alive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm super proud of our team, especially what the work we do with MBI and our community on this topic, because the prosecutions are nice. You're not going to hear me ever say that I don't ever want to take dangerous people off the streets. But in this particular subject, I like to recover victims. If I could recover a kid, if we could recover a victim, that is the number one priority, to get that person out of the situation. We can come back later and prosecute it. It's great. But, we really want to focus in on going in, especially when it comes to kids, going in, get the kids, that we had, cases where they're doing, sex work, commercial sex work for, from the ages of 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And not just kids from our local jurisdiction, but we've had kids from other jurisdictions and countries and states. And so it's something that we want to make sure we're going in and grabbing those kids. And it's something that I love about being part of the task force, if you want to call it. And we really believe in our office about victim-centered prosecution. And that's kind of really one of the foundations of how we want to provide, again, you heard me talk about at the beginning of the show, those tools and one of those pillars, and providing the mission of, compassionate compassionately dealing with our victims. This is what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And to me, it's not even, folks want to sometimes focus on what's the root, right, of the bad fruit here. And it's not either or, it's all. So we want, MBI and law enforcement to be successful, to get these bad actors, right, and get them off the streets, and your office as well, to prosecute successfully. But the victims, I think we're always going to have somebody with vulnerabilities, right? Unfortunately, in our world, that's broken and not perfect. There's going to be somebody going on the street, survival of the fittest. But, State Attorney, where I see the efforts statewide, and I'm involved with a lot of statewide efforts, is really focusing in the next years on the buyer, on the demand. Yeah. Because if we took all the victims off the street today, there would be more tomorrow because of those vulnerabilities, right, in our society. Mm-hmm. If we took all the traffickers and pimps, somebody would fill those shoes, because as we know, the root of this is really greed and money, just like drug trafficking and other crimes. But what about the buyer? Is the buyer accountable, the one who's fueling the demand for human trafficking?
Yeah, it's a full circle thing. It's about a lot deeper discussions. We got to talk about the fabric of our society and morality of it on a lot of levels. And so that's something that we're always going to be kind of juggling, especially when it comes to our criminal justice system. And so, it's like the buyers, whether it's buyers of drugs or sexual human trafficking, who's feeding this narrative, who's feeding the deal, and what we talked about at lunch, who's making all the money. And so there's always somebody making some money in a lot of these circumstances, and driving that down, because we've we now understand this, multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide, and we still continue in the ninth in the city of Orlando and Orange County to be third in reports of human trafficking. So we do a good job about reporting it, but there's always more to be done. So excited for the future, for our future together, and our continued work together to make sure that as far as the Ninth Circuit is concerned, that we're doing the most we can out of the situations we have.
Indeed. Thank you, sir, for your leadership on this.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you. So next person up is a good friend of mine, Matt Murphy. He's an amazing story, and I'll let him tell you all the amazing things that he's done in his life and why this is such an important topic to him. But his foundation is called the Sentinel Foundation. They focus a lot more on international human trafficking. They're actually bringing some of those same tools like locally back home. But he has a lot of experience about what's going on around the world and what does that mean for the people here in the Ninth Circuit. So I'm gonna bring in the guy from the man cave, my good friend Matt Murphy, and can just tell the people a little bit about the foundation, about who you are, and kind of why you are in this fight with us.
So that was great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, State Attorney Bain. So my name is Matt Murphy. My background is from Special Forces and Intelligence. I was a Green Beret, and then I worked at the CIA for some years. And during that time, I got into this fight that I'm in now in one of the worst ways possible. My younger sister, Sarah, was taken on November 5th, 2019, and then from Memphis, Tennessee. And then her body was found in a river in North Mississippi on Christmas Eve, 2019. That is, I can't imagine, what that would be like to be my parents, just, in that situation. But going through that as her brother and having the background, the experience, and the access to information and intelligence that I have, and not being able to do anything about it stateside, decided to start a charity to help fight it and fix some of the problems that I saw. That charity is called Operation Lightshine. And there's a couple Operation Lightshine task forces in Florida right now, and they're expanding around the country. And that was to bring a solution that put agents on a task force, federal, state, and local, and then to get the resources to those agents that they need to fight this crime. Because just domestically, human trafficking probably gets about, and it's not even directly related to human trafficking, about $40 million a year in federal funding, only $40 million. And that goes to the ICACs and the international, the Crimes Against Children task forces. So what we're seeing now is that human trafficking is the second largest criminal enterprise in the world. It recently surpassed the illicit arms trade, and it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world right now too. So and all those stats come from the International Organization of Migration, which monitors all global borders, and about 80% of human trafficking crosses those borders. So these are some pretty legitimate statistics. You see all kinds of nonsense out there from a lot of organizations because people are trying to get shock value and raise money. But it is true. There's an estimated about 28 million people in modern day slavery right now globally. And I can assure you that number is probably higher. So I saw that this domestically, there was a huge problem for this and a huge lack of resources and funding. Because all the law enforcement officers I've met that work in human trafficking and child exploitation, which is when children are targeted online, are some of the best people I've ever met with some of the, can you imagine every day working in a job where you're having to work on cases of children being victimized, abused, raped, tortured, murdered? These law enforcement officers have the utmost respect for me. So what we do now as a foundation, I'm now the president of the Sentinel Foundation. I left Lightshine back in last summer because I wanted to get more on the strategic level of fighting human trafficking and push technology, software, and resources behind the fight. So I came over to the Sentinel Foundation, and my job was to hire the best of the best to come over to Sentinel and start pushing this fight. So we have what's considered to be the best hacker in the world, or at least white hat hacker in the world. That means he's a good guy. Ryan Montgomery on the team. He's our chief technology officer. And we have an amazing team of intel analysts. Our organization is full of Delta Force operators and Green Berets, and then also former federal investigators. So we hire people who are usually are retired or have a minimum of 10 years experience investigating trafficking and child exploitation cases to come over to be the investigative subject matter experts here. So what we do at Sentinel is try to combat human trafficking globally. And also now my job is to push that fight domestically. And it's a very difficult topic to discuss here because it's so dark. A lot of people, when they hear this, they hear the truth and they hear what happens. They either don't want to believe it or they just want to turn it off. Because if you allow this in your thoughts, it's even just to think about it for some people is too much. But I'm going to try not to go too graphic, but just the reality of the situation. You know, labor trafficking is the #1 form of human trafficking globally. And we combat that where we can. But what Sentinel Foundation really focuses on is the children who are being trafficked, because there's so many millions of people. And I just want people to understand this. There's so many millions of people being trafficked. The lack of resources, the lack of funding, the lack of expertise, the lack of help globally just allows it kind of to be the wild, wild west in a lot of countries and continents when it comes to human trafficking. So what we've found is we want to focus on the children that are being trafficked and the children that are being, raped, having their organs harvested, that are going to be victims of child ritualistic abuse, which basically means they do voodoo rituals on them and kill them. And this is very prevalent in a lot of African countries. So we focus on Thailand, Uganda, Colombia, and a couple other South American countries. The reason for that is because those countries are willing to work with us. And this is what I want people to understand. It's very important. We're not cowboys. We don't just go into countries and without their permission, just rescue kids, hunt bad guys. All those things you see in the movies are just not true. We can only work in countries where law enforcement is willing to work with us. And then also too, what just as important as that, we have to make sure that country has the resources there to take care of who we rescue, right? Because a lot of times they'll end up right back into trafficking. In a lot of countries, one of the main ones we're dealing with right now, outside of the ones I mentioned, is Haiti. Haiti's destabilized. It's falling apart. We recently had a pretty large rescue of disabled orphans from there. But what we're seeing is a lot of these countries that have orphanages and other type of setups to take care of children, usually those are the #1 places the children are being trafficked from. So we have to, it's a very difficult job to validate the aftercare programs and make sure that the people that are going to take these kids that we rescue are legitimate, that they're doing the right thing, that they're not just going to turn right back around and do to the kid what was being done when we rescued them. Yeah. And poverty has a very big effect on human trafficking, because it's definitely a money-driven industry, sold to the people with, perverted sexual desire.
So, I really recently dealt with that here locally because, again, I go to a small church in Kissimmee, but I feel like we're like a small world, a small organism of everything that's happening in the world because we encountered that. We had a girl that had been human trafficked here from Guatemala. She was sex trafficked here, and her mom sold her because she couldn't feed her. So she, sold her, and I think so. And we recently found out she sold another one of her kids because there was not enough resources to feed them. So people just come to those countries and buy kids. And this particular gentleman brought her over on his daughter's passport. Pretending to be his daughter, and so that's how she got into the country. So it's so we talk about poverty situation. That is one of those driving factors that people will do out of desperation in some of these places where, you know, things aren't as great as they are here in the United States.
Oh, and definitely. And State Attorney, that is one of the biggest issues now. And I'm going to try to be very careful on how I address this. But, you know, America's always been the number one consumer of child sexual abuse material. Some people call it child pornography. I don't like that term. That kind of gives it a legal or acceptable connotation. But child sexual abuse material, we're the number one consumer in the world of that. But also, too, we're starting to be the number one consumer of human trafficking. You know, because right now, however you may feel on the topic, the fact of the matter is that millions of people from other countries are coming across our border. A lot of these people have, speak the same language, lack the job skills, and a myriad of other issues when they come into the country. Now, they get a stipend. A lot of them do, not all of them, you know, to try to assist and help out. But what we're seeing is a lot of these people that are coming over are from gangs, MS-13, all kinds of other places. So they're taking advantage and trafficking a lot of the people that end up over here. And a lot of people end up being susceptible to being drawn into crime because of the lack of being able to compete in the workforce. And then a lot of the younger people or women and men get taken advantage of and put in trafficking situations to pay their bills or, of course, pay the traffickers' bills. So we're seeing a lot of that spill into America. I've recently received a lot of reports about even organs coming into America, you know, and it's just starting to get to a point where trafficking is such a issue globally that America, the country with the most money, is going to be a direct, you know, consumer of that. And just like you said, State Attorney, there's one of the big drivers behind that is poverty and hunger. And I had a friend who was working a case in Thailand. They pulled a 11-year-old girl out of a brothel who, you know, is being, you know, had customers coming in all day, every day. And they pulled her out of that situation. And during the interviews, she was upset, extremely upset with them that they rescued her. Now, and I just want to put this, you know, out there so people understand just how complex of a situation this is. And she said that her mother had 10 kids, and the traffickers take advantage of these poor families, and they couldn't feed all the kids. The kids were starving. So the traffickers came by and said, hey, if you give us one of your kids to come work in the brothel, then we'll give you enough money for the other 9 to eat. So she volunteered to go at 11 years old to go be put in that situation and to sleep with men all day long so that her 9 siblings could eat. And now that they had rescued her, she was more worried about her 9 other siblings starving than what was happening to her. Right. So,
all right, we got I got 2 more minutes with you. I know it's a big thing we'll talk about. I want you to talk a little bit about something I saw you guys post a little while ago about, because it's something that's going on social media that it makes me afraid. Move to this country, get a job, and how that's turned into a nightmare in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of these things they'll do, and it's been touched on earlier, is, you know, false promises, right? False promises will be given out in a lot of different ways, especially when it comes to work and different things. So a lot of people will come to this country for this dream job or a way to take care of it. And then once they get here, now they're trapped. They have no way to feed themselves, no way to take care of themselves. And the traffickers.
But also, it does happen in reverse too. Like they're telling Americans to go over to these other countries and you know, get this job. It's going to be so great, and there's no job waiting for you to get there.
It happens all over. It's probably one of the biggest ways that adults are trafficked is false promises and false jobs. And yes, it does go both ways. And we're starting to see, you know, it used to traditionally not happen to Americans as much, but just given the current economy and situation, Americans are now starting to fall victim to this in other countries. So, you know, if there is a way to commit a crime, unfortunately, you know, what we've seen with human nature and people is that people will exploit that and take advantage of it. And desperation is one of the main things that these criminals, they prey on it. You know, so they'll send the job, you show up, and the next thing you know, you're enslaved. You're in some type of servitude. They'll take your passport. You have no papers. No one believes you, and now you're trapped. And you're going to do whatever they say. And this also happens too, where a lot of people are fully aware of what's going to happen to them when they get to that country, but they don't have a choice, so they think, and they put themselves in that dynamic, give up the passport, and end up being, in some type of servitude or slavery, and whatever the organization that's holding them is going to do, whether it's labor or sex, brothel type work. They're stuck in it.
Yeah. And it's really crazy. It's super unfortunate. And it's like one of the, like I said, I want to talk to you, we'll talk to people about what's going on here locally and kind of give them a bigger picture about what's going on around the world. So this is not just a local issue for everyone. This is a major issue, both nationally and internationally, about, basically the human rights of somebody being taken and them being enslaved in some kind of way. So I want to thank you, Mr. Matt Murphy. Thank you for coming and joining us here on Community Conversations. You have a great day.
You too, Attorney Bain. Thank you.
All right, so I want to close this out. Want to uplift us on a more positive note. One of my principles I like to live on is choosing love over fear. My dad told me a long time that a lot of people make choices in their lives based on something they're afraid of. They're afraid of some outcome. They're afraid of something bad that's going to happen, and are just paralyzed by that indecision and that decision to live in fear. But my thing is that if you could choose the thing you love, for me, I love God, I love my family, I love my community. And if my choice, whatever I'm choosing, is going to be in line with that love, then even if I'm afraid, even if I am apprehensive, even if I, not sure what's going to happen next, like answering a phone call and saying yes to doing this job, even if I'm not sure what's going to happen, that I needed to go. I needed to not be afraid, because there are people that can use your talents, they can use your help, they can use everything that you have in you. And God can use you in so many wonderful ways that you can't even think about. And so it is one of the reasons why I do this job every day. It's because of the love I have for our community, the love I have for the people inside of our community. And it is something that is principal to who I am when coming out of where I live, where I grew up. And so actually next week, you're going to get a chance to learn a little bit about that. We're going to have a little fireside chat with myself and my beautiful wife, Dr. Andrea Bain, and Attorney Greg Jackson is going to moderate that discussion. And you'll learn a little bit more about me as a person, and about how I got here, and how improbable it really is to really have that opportunity, the opportunities that have been presented, the struggles that have occurred during that process, and the things that had to be sacrificed to get here, and learn a little bit about our background. A lot of people may know my daughters because they're more famous than I am. But before then, before all that started, how some kid that grew up in inner city Fort Lauderdale Lakes, and how did he get out of the situation that could have been hopeless, and decide to hope, and decide to dream, and decided to love everyone, to love what he did every single day. So that is what I want to bring to you all next week. I want to thank all my friends that came to join me today. Sergeant Gooding for NBI, Tomas Larens from United Abolitionists, Matt Murphy from the Sentinel Foundation. They are a wealth of knowledge. And if you know somebody that needs help from human trafficking, the hotline is 888-888-HOPE-1. That is again, 888-888-HOPE-1. And that is the local hotline that you can call to get the help that our victims need or the help that you may need. So love you all. Hope you all have a blessed day. See you next week.
You've been listening to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain. Join us again next Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. for another episode. You've been listening to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain. Join us again next Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. for another episode.